On today's episode, Duncan Keith and the Edmonton Oilers are on to the Western Conference Final. I'll also provide some updates on a couple of Blackhawks prospects that are taking part in the postseason for their respected junior clubs. And then to wrap things up will be Dylan Strome's 2021-2022 season recap. All that and plenty more right here on Locked On Blackhawks.
You're Locked On Blackhawks, your daily podcast on the Chicago Blackhawks. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome in to the Locked On Blackhawks podcast, your daily podcast on the Chicago Blackhawks. Today is Friday, May 27th. I'm your host, Jack Bushman. You can find me out on Twitter at JackBushman2, or you could also go and check out my Strictly Blackhawks account at Talkin' Hockey for all the latest Blackhawks news and updates. And if you're listening to the audio version of today's episode and you like what you're hearing, then please go and show some support first by following the podcast, which will only take a quick couple of seconds. Literally, just a quick click of the button will help me out tremendously. Go and leave the show 5 stars if you like what you're hearing today as well. And if you're tuning in through Apple Podcasts or through Odyssey, then feel free to leave me a review. I always greatly appreciate getting some feedback from my tremendous listeners out there. And best of all, it's 100% for free wherever you may be listening to your podcasts, whether that be through Apple Podcasts, Odyssey, Spotify, Google Podcasts, etc. It's all 100% for free. And if you go and follow the show right now, then you'll be able to get the latest episode as soon as it comes out each day. And if you're not already watching the video version of today's episode, then be sure to go and check out Locked On Blackhawks on YouTube, because each and every episode, folks, moving forward through the rest of the offseason and into training camp this fall is going to have a video version attached to it as well. So if you haven't done so yet, please go on over to Locked On Blackhawks on YouTube and hit that subscribe button. I'm really trying to keep boosting these numbers up. Go and smash the like button down below for me as well. And be sure to comment as to what grade you think Blackhawks forward Dylan Strome deserves for his performance this year. And last, be sure to go and ring the bell, turn on those push notifications so that you can be notified when the episode gets uploaded to YouTube each and every day. All right, enough of that. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you all for joining me on another episode of Locked On Blackhawks, your one-stop shop for all things Chicago Blackhawks, and for making the show your first listen here to start off your day. To kick things off here this afternoon, let's get into the Edmonton Oilers taking down the Calgary Flames in Game 5 last night, winning 5-4 in overtime, with the game-winning goal coming from none other than Connor McJesus himself. And now the Oilers are on to the Western Conference Final, where they will have a matchup with either the Colorado Avalanche or the St. Louis Blues. Game 6 of that series is actually later on this evening, with the Avs having another chance to close out the series coming tonight in St. Louis. Should be another fun and entertaining contest at Enterprise Arena. But even though this series between Edmonton and Calgary only lasted 5 games, what a battle of Alberta we got to see, folks. Each and every game was filled with a lot of offense, back and forth action, goal scoring on both sides, not a whole lot of goaltending. Each game's ending like 6-5. There was a lot of physical play. I mean, you name it, we got it in the Battle of Alberta. And it's kind of a shame that this thing only lasted 5 games. But how about the Edmonton Oilers, folks? After barely sneaking their way by the Los Angeles Kings in the first round of the playoffs, they take down the Calgary Flames in 5 games. And a lot of people, including myself, expected the Flames to win this series. I actually had the Flames going all the way to the Stanley Cup final and falling short to the Tampa Bay Lightning. So there goes my bracket challenge. But what a performance out of Edmonton, and their big guns really have been leading the way. Connor McDavid's doing Connor McDavid things. Evander Kane already has 12 goals so far in the postseason. Zach Hyman, what a pickup he's been for them. He was an absolute weapon throughout that series with Calgary. And then Leon Draisaitl, folks, is nothing short of amazing, because on one leg. He's playing with a busted up ankle. It's been a huge storyline for the Oilers. He still managed to have 17 points in this 5-game series with at least 3 points in every single game. I mean, that's actually insane. And it's hard to fathom that he's that good where he can put up those kinds of numbers on just one leg. I mean, it's remarkable. What a gutsy performance out of Draisaitl to help lead the Oilers to this upset series win over Calgary without being even close to 100%. But with the Oilers advancing on to the Western Conference Final, folks, this is actually really good news for the Chicago Blackhawks because don't forget there was a condition in the Duncan Keith trade that took place last summer that stated if the Oilers went on to reach the Stanley Cup Final and Duncan Keith is top 4 among all their defensemen in terms of average time on ice per game, then the 3rd round pick that the Blackhawks received in that deal would become a 2nd round pick in the 2022 NHL draft. And as of right now, Keith is in 3rd by a large margin among all Oilers defensemen in time on ice. So unless something drastic happens, Duncan Keith is going to be, he's going to continue to play top 4 minutes for the Oilers as long as they're alive in the Stanley Cup playoffs. So if they're able to defeat Colorado or St. Louis in the next round, which I know seems like a really tough task, but at the same time, so did defeating Calgary, then the Blackhawks are going to be sitting pretty. So now all of us have a reason to become Edmonton Oilers fans for the Western Conference Final, because if they move on to the Stanley Cup, that would mean the Blackhawks would have 3 second-round picks in the 2022 NHL draft. All right, there are some updates out of the Stanley Cup playoffs. Coming up in just a moment, I will be providing a couple of updates as well on some Blackhawks prospects taking part in the playoffs for their respected junior clubs. But first, I need to talk to you all about BetOnline. It's that time of the year again, folks, as baseball season is finally upon us, and BetOnline has way more odds and info, from game scores, totals, player performance props, to where the next fired manager is going to land or who the first fired manager is going to be this year. Regardless of what you want to bet on, BetOnline remains the number 1 spot for all sports betting here in 2022. It's not just baseball. From the NHL and NBA playoffs, esports, boxing, and UFC, right to your favorite Vegas casino games, do not wait to take advantage of all the amazing offers available for the 2022 season. BetOnline is both the fastest and the easiest way to bet on all your favorite sports and Vegas casino games. BetOnline, where the game begins. All right, we're back here on the Locked On Blackhawks podcast, getting into segment 2 now today with things starting to slow down a bit this offseason in terms of Blackhawks news. I thought now would be a good time to mention that a couple of Blackhawks prospects are taking part in the conference finals, or the semifinals as they're called, in the QMJHL for their respected junior teams, both of which, by the way, happen to be 7th round picks of the Blackhawks in the past 2 NHL drafts. First, Louis Crevier and the Quebec Remparts are taking on the Shawinigan Cataracts, in the QMJHL semifinals right now, and with the series currently tied at 1 apiece. But Crevier was the 7th round pick of the Blackhawks back in the 2020 NHL draft. And for those of you who don't know, he is a 6'8", 215-pound defenseman, an absolutely massive human being for being only 21 years old. And he was actually around back at training camp in the fall for the Blackhawks. I remember seeing him on the ice and being like, oh my God, this kid is an absolute giant. And for being so large, he actually moves around pretty well out there on the ice. He's got a good, strong, and powerful stride that he uses to his advantage. He's also, so hard to get around in transition at that size. And he also uses a really long stick because of his height. And it makes it difficult for opponents to enter the offensive zone or the neutral zone with some speed because he's able to knock the puck away. So for a 7th round pick, I mean, Crevier, it seems like there could be something there. And clearly the Blackhawks are interested because they've already inked him to his entry-level contract, and I'd expect him to be headed to Rockford next year with the Ice Hogs. This is his 4th year in the QMJHL after all. And in 62 games this year, Crevier recorded 10 goals and 26 assists for 36 points. So he has a little bit of a skill game, which is certainly welcome with him being that size. And so far in 9 postseason games for Quebec, Crevier has recorded 4 goals and 3 assists for 7 points. So he's nearly been a point per game defenseman this far. He's been very active. He was actually named to the CHL Team of the Week during the first round for Quebec as well. So he's been really awesome, been really good defensively, and just playing a big role. By the way, he's playing on the top pairing for Quebec as he has throughout the entire postseason. So playing a big role, and he's been a huge part of Quebec reaching the semifinals, where Game 3 of their best of 5 with Shawinigan will be on Sunday afternoon. The other 7th round pick in the conference finals is Jalen Luypen with the Edmonton Oil Kings of the WHL. Luypen was the 7th round pick of the Hawks back in the previous NHL draft. And Edmonton, by the way, they have been an absolute powerhouse in the WHL for the past couple of years, and they've been tearing it apart so far in the WHL postseason. Edmonton's currently ahead 3-1 in their conference finals series with the Winnipeg Ice, and overall throughout the playoffs so far, they have an 11-1 record in 12 games. Just a dominant run that they've been on the past couple of weeks. And to be fair, this team is absolutely loaded. They have former first-round picks in Dylan Guenther, Jake Neighbors for the St. Louis Blues, Caden Gooley's on the back end, and they have Sebastian Cossa in net. This is loaded, probably one of the all-time stacked WHL teams right here. And Luypen was a huge part of their success in the regular season. He was regularly seeing top 6 minutes en route to having 29 goals and 35 assists for 64 points in 66 games this season. So far in the playoffs, though, Luypen has been a little bit quieter. He's got 7 points in 12 games, and I believe he only had 1 assist in Edmonton's second-round series. So hopefully he'll be able to pick it up a little bit more here, especially being on such a dominant team. But not a bad postseason run by any means either. He's still been pretty good and been playing a middle 6 role for the Oil Kings. But in regards to his future with the Blackhawks organization, this is also Luypen's 4th year of junior hockey, like Crevier. And personally, I would think that he's done enough to get an entry-level contract from the Blackhawks and to potentially be in Rockford next season, especially considering how thin the Blackhawks are in their pipelines at forward. Why not take a shot on a kid like Jalen Luypen, who, he is undersized. He's 5'10", only 160 pounds. So he definitely needs to throw on some muscle in order for his game to translate to the next levels. But he has shown some good offensive skill set in the past couple of seasons now. That also has been on a really good team surrounded by a lot of good teammates. But still, I think overall with the Hawks forward department being so thin, you got to take a chance on some of these kids. And Luypen looks like a good, in the 7th round, you're kind of just taking risks there. You're taking a chance. And Luypen, for 7th round pick, I think that was a pretty good selection by the Blackhawks in the 7th round. I think they've done well in the 7th round each of these last 2 years. Crevier, as I said, I think he's going to be in Rockford next year. We're going to have to wait and see what happens this summer with Luypen once the Oil Kings season comes to an end, which, by the way, with how it's looking right now, it looks like it could be coming to a close with the WHL championship. All right, there are a couple of updates on a pair of Blackhawks 7th round picks in recent years. Coming up in just a minute, I still have to get into forward Dylan Strome's 2021-2022 season recap. But first, I need to talk to you all about Built Bar, which is a protein bar that tastes just like a candy bar. Summer is coming, and you're going to need some food for being on the go. Well, Built Bars are the perfect snack to take with you everywhere you go. Throw them into your bags, throw them into your kids' backpacks, and make sure that everyone has a snack and a bar to be fueled for their summer adventures. And the best part about Built Bar is that they're both delicious and healthy. So there's no more sacrificing delicious food for health, because with Built Bar, you can have both. You can get the best of both worlds. And have you tried Built Bar Puffs yet? Because if not, then you're seriously missing out on one of the best tasting protein bars on the market, with flavors like banana cream pie, cinnamon churro, birthday cake. they're all outstanding. They don't even taste like a protein bar. It seriously tastes like you're just having some chocolate of some sort. I can't believe it's actually healthy for you. Best of all, these Built Bar Puffs are 150 calories or less, and they have at least 17 grams or more of protein. So head on over to Built.com right now and be sure to use the promo code LOCKED15 to get 15% off your next order. That's Built.com with the exclusive promo code LOCKED15, one word locked in all caps, followed by the number 15 to get 15% off your next Built Bar order. Welcome back to the Locked On Blackhawks podcast. I'm your host, Jack Bushman. Moving on into segment 3 today, before I wrap things up, I still got to get into forward Dylan Strome's 2021-2022 season recap segment. And for those of you who haven't tuned into yesterday's episode yet, be sure to go and check that out after the show wraps up here in a few moments to hear what grade I gave Blackhawks defenseman Jake McCabe for his performance this season. And also, while you have a second here, be sure to go and comment down below. I want to hear what you all have to think. Go and comment down below as to what grade you think Dylan Strome should be getting for his efforts this year. But getting into Strome's season, it was quite an interesting start for him, to say the least, because coming into training camp, there were a lot of trade rumors surrounding his name. Jeremy Colleton was still the head coach of the Blackhawks. Stan Bowman was still the general manager. And quite frankly, early on in camp, in the preseason, the start of the regular season, Strome just wasn't getting a fair shot to prove himself. And that wasn't something that was just happening this season. No, if you go back to the past few years under Colleton, Strome was always jumping up and down the lineup. He never had a consistent spot. He was even being tested out at both center and the wing. I mean, he just was never in the same place for more than 2 or 3 games, it felt like. Colleton always seemed to be tinkering with Strome, and I really think that honestly hurt his development the past few seasons. And then out of the gate, Colleton apparently thinks Strome isn't good enough to even crack the lineup. He's being regularly scratched in the early part of the season before Colleton eventually ends up getting fired. And I feel like throughout that whole stretch that Strome was getting scratched, a lot of us Blackhawks fans were screaming from the heavens to give him an opportunity, to give him some playing time. We have seen it in the past, playing with Patrick Kane and his good buddy Alex DeBrincat. And those three can put up numbers. They can produce for this offense. And then what do you know? Derek King comes in. To be fair, King did scratch Strome only 2 times, not nearly as much as Colleton did early on in the year, and how reluctant he was to give him an opportunity. Strome did still have to earn it with Derek King, but once he did, he jumped right up on that top line with Kaner and Cat and became the team's best center by far this season. From supposedly not even good enough to crack the lineup to becoming the team's best center. That's the progression out of Dylan Strome this year, folks. And once he got that chance, I mean, he took it and absolutely ran away with it and ended up having his best season since that first stint with the Blackhawks after being acquired from the Coyotes. But Strome ended up playing in 69 games for the Blackhawks this season while recording 22 goals, which is a career best, with 26 assists and 48 points, both of which were also the second most of his career. So really good offensive output out of Stromer this season. He did have 28 penalty minutes, I was going to say 33. I believe Jake McCabe had 33 yesterday. But those 28 minutes, penalty minutes, were actually a career high for Strome, but still not really all that much. 14 minor penalties in 68 games. And I think that's mostly due to the uptick in ice time that he saw this year. He was on the ice more than ever. And as a result, he took more penalties than ever, even though, it still wasn't a lot. So not really worried about Stromer having to stay out of the penalty box. He also had 5 power play goals this season, which personally, I think for the opportunity that he was given, isn't good enough. And I think one thing the Blackhawks, Strome needs to work on in particular, along with Jonathan Toews, they just need to get more aggressive when they have the puck down low at the right dot, when they're right next to the net. Because other teams are recognizing that they're not going to take the puck to the net, and they're just taking away those passing lanes. They know that Strome or Toews whoever is there isn't going to shoot it. So I think they just need to get that mentality back, like Jonathan Toews had in the earlier part of his career. I don't know where this went, but it just vanished. Like, he loved getting the puck down low and just stuffing it home, and some of the big guys would go and clean up the scraps if he wasn't able to put it past the goaltender. I think they need to get back to doing that. And Strome just needs to be more aggressive, I think, with the puck on his stick and open up that other dimension, because once he starts getting aggressive and taking the puck to the net, that's going to open things up so much more for Patrick Kane and Alex DeBrincat. So I think it's really important for Strome to add that other dimension to his game moving forward. But only 5 power play goals from him this season. What else do I got here in the numbers? Oh yeah, one other thing I really wanted to emphasize about Dylan Strome's campaign is he shot 17.5%, which is a career best, on way to 22 goals, which is also a career high. He has shot in the double digits every year of his NHL career so far, but I don't think shooting nearly, 18% is all that sustainable. So I think, he was on track for right around 30 goals if he played all 82 games, but I have a feeling that's probably the cap on Dylan Strome in the goal scoring department, because odds of him shooting 18% once again in the NHL just really aren't all that likely. One other strong spot of Strome's game that I thought kind of went under the radar this year was his face-off win percentage. Strome won 52.3% of his draws this year, and that was an area that he really struggled at in his first couple of years with the Blackhawks before this one. And except for Jonathan Toews, it feels like the Blackhawks haven't had a top 6 center, or even a top 9 center for that matter, have a face-off win percentage above 50 in forever. So kudos to Dylan Strome for working hard and certainly having his best year of his career at the face-off dot. Hopefully that's something he'll be able to continue on, assuming, again, that the Blackhawks are going to bring him back this offseason. Something I already mentioned, Strome set a career high in terms of ice time, 17 minutes and 26 seconds. And he earned that ice time because of how well he immediately jumped in on that top line, and things started clicking right away. He deserved that uptick in ice time. So good to see Derek King, once he got hot, recognizing this is where Strome needed to be. He stopped the tinkering that Jeremy Colleton was doing, and that led to Strome having one of his better offensive seasons of his career. Taking a look at Strome's analytics now, he was actually one of the better Blackhawks in this department this season, because not only did Strome have an impressive 54.6 Corsi percentage, which is actually better than both Patrick Kane and Alex DeBrincat, but he also was on the ice for 74 goals for to 56 against. And I know a lot of those goals he wasn't even involved in. It just came from DeBrincat and Kane's magic this year. But I think more impressively than that is not the positive margin, but to only be on the ice for 56 goals against, with how large of a role he played and how often he was on the ice. I think that's pretty damn impressive. And Strome actually has had really good analytical numbers throughout his career. So it was good to see once he got that larger opportunity, that continued to stay the same. He continued to put up really good analytics, even though the Blackhawks were terrible defensively and his line was on the ice for by far the most time. I think that's one also underrated aspect of Dylan Strome. Continues to be on the ice for more offense than defense. So all in all, great offensive season from Dylan Strome, career highs in goals, second most points and assists of his career. Great year at the faceoff dot as well. I do think he has another level to get to on the power play, but I'm really hoping that a new coaching staff will come in and be able to add those dimensions to the man advantage moving forward. All the analytics for Strome were really good. He took advantage of his opportunity. He ran with it, had a tremendous second half of the season. And I think because of that, I really do think he's deserving of a contract extension. If the Blackhawks didn't move him at the deadline, I don't think they're going to get something better than they were offered then in the summer. So I really hope that he does get an extension, because I think he's deserving of it. I don't know if he's capable of being a top line center in the future, because He's not the greatest all-around playmaker, and also the speed is always going to be a concern with the NHL just getting faster and faster and faster, but I definitely think he's worth keeping around and could be a very solid second or third line depth piece one day down the road. So taking all of this into consideration, folks, I am going to give Blackhawks forward Dylan Strome an A- for his performance this season. All right, folks, I think that is going to wrap up Friday, May 27th episode of Locked On Blackhawks. Thank you all again for tuning into the show, and be sure to go and follow Locked On Blackhawks wherever you get your podcasts, and go and subscribe to Locked On Blackhawks on YouTube, and you'll be able to get the latest episode as soon as it comes out each day. And after the show, be sure to go and check out the Locked On NHL podcast for all the latest news, info, and updates from all the teams still alive in the Stanley Cup playoffs. It's free and available on all platforms, so be sure to go and check out Locked On NHL right now, wherever you get your podcasts. Once again, thank you for tuning into today's episode. I'm your host, Jack Bushman. You can find me out on Twitter at JackBushman2, or you could also go and check out my Strictly Blackhawks account at Talkin' Hockey for all the latest Blackhawks news and updates. And for any questions regarding anything related to the show or to the Blackhawks, don't forget that Monday's episode is Mailbag Monday. So for any questions, feel free to email lockedonblackhawks@gmail.com. You could also hit me up on any one of my Twitter accounts, or you could call 708-653-0572 to leave a voicemail. So until tomorrow's episode, thanks again for checking into the Locked On Blackhawks podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.